Chris Goodbody. I'm here with another installment of Spotlight on Business. And today I have the privilege of meeting with and talking to Stacey Lynn, who is the owner of Optimize Me, Brainwave optimization. And really fascinating opportunity I had to speak with Stacey about the business that she's in and what it is she's doing. And the best way is to let her kind of describe what it is she does. But effectively, what she does is she's involved in an alternative, holistic modality of providing a self-regulating, holistic approach to wellness through utilizing and examining and reflecting brain waves to the person who is suffering from a variety of conditions. And so it's exciting to be able to listen to her talk about this technology and what it can do for people and the results it's had. And I'm really excited to be able to bring you this information and let her tell you about what it is that she does. So with that, proud to introduce Stacey Lynn with Optimize Me, Brainwave Optimization. So Stacey, we're here at your office, very tranquil setting, very peaceful office. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I provide brainwave optimization, which is an advanced form of neurofeedback, but we don't have as much similarity with neurofeedback to really even use that word, frankly. It's really gone in such a different direction. But we use the EEG sensors, and those attached to the scalp via a little conductive paste, and then that reads brainwaves. Those go into the computer where they're translated into identical sound waves. So you're hearing your brain through earbuds. So your brain is literally hearing itself in an auditory mirror. So in real time, as it functions, it watches itself function. So it's like filming your golf swing to see what you're doing wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When I first heard about what it is you do, I just was like so amazed and interested in it because it is such a, it seems like a revolutionary concept,
It is.
that,
It's
we
so
can,
revolutionary that it's simple.
yeah.
Or so simple it's revolutionary. It's like people think of it and they go, whoa, which was my reaction.
Yeah. So I think the question on a lot of people's minds would probably be, does this work? So tell us your thoughts on that, or maybe some evidence.
That's always an interesting question for any healthcare modality, because the answer is yes for a lot of people, and for some people, no. Just like every other modality, so medication, drugs, you name it, it's all that way, because guess what? We're all unique. So the way that I tend to describe it is if imbalance is in your brain is what's causing a particular behavior, symptom, or condition, and we are able to correct or help your brain correct that imbalance, then the behavior, symptom, or condition will generally subside or go away. If what's causing your behavior, symptom, or condition is something completely different, then it's not likely to make that change. So when we do an assessment, which is how we always begin, then we're able to kind of get a really good visual of where imbalance is, how much imbalance, what locations, what type, what does that look like. And if we can correlate that in the data with what does a brain typically look like that has these behavior, symptoms, and conditions, then we can get a match and we can say, okay, the likelihood is pretty strong that if we change the underlying brainwave patterns that seem to be correlated with this behavior, symptom, or condition, then we're likely to change it. We're very concerned about not being in that diagnostic space, because the work has never been standardized for diagnosis, and that's not our intention, because I can put a label on you or your behavior, symptom, or condition, and you don't care. Yeah. You don't want to have the behavior, symptom, or condition anymore. And my own personal experience with it is that people just want to be better. They just want to feel better. They want to have quality of life improvements, and they don't so much care what we call it. So insurance companies care what it's called. I don't.
Yeah. So that brings up a question in my mind. My understanding is that the science of studying the brain, understanding the brain, and actually being able to repair the brain or understand what's going on that's wrong with the brain is fairly infant in its
Yes.
stages. Is that
Yes.
an accurate?
It's not that they've never been studying the brain until recently, but it just got way more interesting when they discovered neuroplasticity was something that everyone had throughout their life. They did think for a long time that neuroplasticity, or the ability for the brain to change in some way, was limited. So at the age of 7 or what have you, they thought what you got is what you got. Well, stroke patients, brain injury types of clients, and what their brains have done in order to heal have really shown them that that wasn't true. So once neuroplasticity was discovered to be part of the natural way your brain functioned anyway, then it got really interesting to study. And so that's really why it's become such a huge frontier right now. That, and once we got interested in studying it, we started finding some really interesting ways to work with it. And we're still doing crude ways of healing the brain, very invasive procedures, and it's not like those aren't sometimes necessary, but our approach here is to really have as much holistic and non-invasive approach as possible, and to respect the way the brain functions, because the way it functions is also the way it heals. The way it got out of balance is also the same process that it will use to get back in balance. Mm-hmm. And so I really like that part of doing this work, because it's respectful to the way the brain and body works. It's not like paternalistically throwing medication or devices at it to heal it.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really appreciate about the way that this technology engages with the person's brain.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And so the other question I have is, a lot of people are probably wondering whether or not their insurance would cover something like this.
Mm-hmm. It's always a case-by-case basis. I tell people to get clarity from them ahead of time. I've had personal injury protection plan pay out for a person before, and we did pre-approve that. Health savings accounts, cafeteria plans have the federal list and alternative modality, and so I'm able to fall into that category easily. I've had several people be able to use that, but typically traditional insurance does not. I always tell people to ask and see, because
couldn't hurt to try to find
ask.
out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's just a phone call or 12 phone calls, sir. I think eventually it'll be something that this type of work, not just this one, but this type of work will be something that, if they really do the math and figure out that in the long run an insurance company would be better off. And the good news of that is, obviously, for the client, and on some level the insurance company, and someone else doesn't get lots of money for that lifelong medication, and so that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
But clients are figuring out that there's another trade-off that they're understanding all by themselves, and that is the side effects on medication. They have no idea what this is doing to their body, and they're recognizing all by themselves that this is not something that they want to do. So cost aside, they're looking for alternatives.
Yeah, the quality of life and the side effects you mentioned. I mean, commercials will highlight that,
right,
and yet we're
45-second commercial, 30 seconds of it is the drug side effects, including death for whatever. It's just like,
yeah,
we've got to rethink this.
Yeah. So your story I found very interesting about how you got into this. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this, what happened with you?
Like a lot of people that do this kind of work, I found it as a client initially. I had a high-speed rollover car accident 20 years ago. I fell asleep driving, and so after that my brain had a really great solution for that problem, which was, since that went so badly, no more sleep for you. So literally my brain would not let me go into deep sleep. So 15 years of chronic insomnia was the solution to falling asleep driving. The other thing that happens when you flip around and roll in a car is you turn into kind of a rag doll. So the opposite of that is stiff, lockdown, muscle contraction. And that was my my brain's other solution for that problem. So insomnia and muscle tightness, extreme muscle tightness for the next 15 years. And I tried all kinds of modalities, external modalities, including chiropractic, acupuncture, massage. Craniosacral was the most helpful thing that I did, frankly. And
what is that?
Craniosacral is an energy modality that involves balancing cranial sacral impulses in the body, and so it works very closely with the neurological system, and that's where the problem was my brain was, chiropractic does as well, but in my case, my brain would basically respond back to the adjustment with an answer like, yeah, no, we're doing this for a reason, so back off, and it would just put it back the way it was. So physiologically put it back the way it was. So my brain wanted to hold my body in a certain posture, and my brain would insist that that be the case no matter what else I did, because it's just survival. It's just your survival mechanism is in charge, and it will do what it thinks is best. Quality of life is not its agenda. It's your agenda. It's not your survival brain's agenda. So your survival brain is in charge, and it will do what it will do. And so this was the first thing that I found that could go in and literally reprogram that and just show my unconscious survival brain how to go back to neutral. And that's really where it goes back to, is a place, a naive state before that happened. Because that's what all trauma response is. PTSD, all of it, it's all your brain's post-trauma reaction pattern to prevent that from happening again, in a nutshell. And so this was a way that my brain could go back to that naive state. Reprogramming your software, that kind of language is appropriate. It's just taking your brain back to origin, back to where it was before that happened. And it doesn't mean you forget what happened, but your brain doesn't need to behave as though that's about to happen again. And that's the problem for a lot of trauma responses. So cognitive behaviors or cognitive symptoms, brain fog was a big pattern for me. Once you've had significant trauma, your brain is really dedicated to survival and stress management, and it doesn't really care too much about cognitive processes. Memory tends to be a casualty of that. All kinds of things that used to be just your normal level of functioning now are way too complicated. You just don't have the bandwidth to do survival, to run survival programming and also normal functioning. So normal functioning is what falls off. When I found this work, I did the sessions and fairly quickly went to Arizona to get the certification training, and he'd come back and begin doing it, and that was a little over 5 years ago.
And it was a pretty unique set of circumstances that allowed you to...
Yeah, the lady that was the provider here in Portland retiring, and so I was able to get her license and equipment, which still had a training slot in it, and was able to do that for significantly less cost than otherwise would have been. So it was just one of those things where kind of the universe had both doors wide open. So I was happy to fall into that opportunity. It's been an amazing journey, really, to get to not only experience how it's helped me, because there's no way I would be able to own a business and run a business in the state I was in before. That was ridiculous. To be able to experience what it's done for me, but then to also just be able to see so many people that were just at their wits' end, as I was, with the level of the quality of life issues that were going on for them, and to be able to help them, and to be able to understand that they helped themselves. I'm just a facilitator. I'm just holding up the mirror to the brain. That's all I'm doing. And that feels good as opposed to I'm curing somebody, I'm whatever. It's not so complicated.
I still think there's going to be a lot of skepticism out there.
Sure.
There's probably people that say, yeah, well, it worked for you, but would it work for me?
And the answer is I don't know. That's the only answer any practitioner of any modality can ever give you. If they give you a different answer, they're not telling you the truth. That includes your Western medicine doctor when he gives you a prescription. Is this going to work for me? Truth is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't care what the statistics are. Truth is, I don't know. Globally, We have somewhere in the 85 to 90% of people that do this work as clients self-report significant improvement in the goals that they selected. I still can't tell you for sure. It's that kind of thing. It's people resonate to it or they don't. If someone hears about this work and they just think that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in the world, then they need to stick with what they're doing. And if their system isn't ready to shift and to do things on that fairly fundamental level, then they shouldn't do it, because there is definitely a whole system approach with this. And if for whatever reason a person is petrified that they're going to have to give up some of the defense mechanisms that they've used their whole life, they should wait, because they might have to give up some of the defense mechanisms they've used their whole life. And that's a conscious mind process, and that's one of the things that you'll struggle with in counseling, trying to help someone with insights or behavior changes, and their conscious mind is like, doing it for a reason, not giving it up. So if you approach this work with that same conscious mind objection, that's going to be something that you're not going to want to give up, then you should not do it.
So what are some examples of some of those defense mechanisms?
People have beliefs around themselves that they've taken on even as little kids. I'm the person who can't do anything right. If you don't know who in the world you would be without that belief, you're going to be scared to give that up. You're going to be afraid to even inquire as to who you could be without that thought. People come all the time with some sense of that fear and that sense of what's going to be different about me afterward. And it's not like your personality is going to change, or you're going to be the same person you're going to be. It's just without the noise, without the interference of crazy mind, I call it monkey mind. It's all of those disquieting things that go on in your emotional or cognitive processes that don't serve you. And those aren't part of your personality. Sometimes we think they are, like I'm just an angry person. No, that's brain function.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be that way. And being able to improve meditation, a lot of times people will come for that alone, just because it's hard to do a meaningful meditation practice when you're having to fight monkey mind so much. So this can help significantly in calming down monkey mind, just being able to have other modalities be more effective. So there's people that have tried all kinds of things, and then they'll do this and get their general system well balanced, and then other modalities can be efficacious too after that. For instance, I actually tried acupuncture and I couldn't feel anything moving, nothing happening. I didn't feel chi, I didn't feel nothing. After I did brain training, about 9 months later or something, I did an acupuncture treatment, and I could feel all this stuff going on, and I said to the acupuncturist, I was like, what is that? She's like, what do you mean, what is that? It's chi. And I'm like, yeah, well, I never felt it before. I didn't feel anything before. And it felt like this electric cord was running around my body. Well, turns out that the sensors are often on meridian points too, so we're doing kind of acupuncture for the brain.
Wow.
Essentially, because we're affecting meridian channels as well. So people will be sitting in the chair with the sensors on their head, and stuff will clear in other parts of their body, and sometimes they'll actually feel that. They'll say, oh, I had this old injury site that did something weird. It got hot, it got tingly, it twitched, it did something. And so yeah, acupuncture has more efficacy for me now than it did before, because now my brain has allowed that to be effective. Massage was worthless for me before because I was a rock, and you couldn't push past that, because if you push into tissue that is guarded, what does it do? It guards more. So you had to find a way around the guards. And that's what this did, is it found a way around the guards.
Wow. So what's the state of the science, if you will, around all of this?
There's actually For several years now, there's been some really nice research projects going on in conjunction with Wake Forest Medical Center. They've gotten several grants and are specifically studying brainwave optimization with different conditions. The first published study that they did was on insomnia, and that was very effective. They're working with post-traumatic stress, some emotional anxiety, depression sorts of disorders. They're doing a project with the DoD as well. And so they're working on all of the kind of hard science backdrop to support the efficacy of the work. And so that's exciting to know that that's going on as well.
Yeah, that's great. So the other thing you mentioned when we last talked was that it can actually help with things like diabetes or high blood pressure.
I've had a lot of people who have been assisted with their high blood pressure because if the brain waves, and I can often see this on a brain map, that certain patterns exist that often will correlate, not always, often will correlate with high blood pressure. So if your brain is sending out signals that's driving high blood pressure, then throwing medication at the heart or the vessels isn't the foundational level to affect change. So if you can get the brain to de-escalate its own exaggerated patterns that are causing something like high blood pressure, then you can not have high blood pressure anymore. So I've had lots of people who've been able to back off or get all the way off of blood pressure medication because their brain isn't screaming loud high frequencies anymore. So.
Is that the same with insulin and diabetes, or is that something different?
You know, diabetes has a lot of, it's a little bit more complex type of issue. What we typically advise with various conditions like that, this is not going to cure a disease. We don't make that claim, but what it can often do is help your brain and body respond better to the disease you have. And that's where a lot of symptoms, behaviors, and conditions come from, is your brain or body's reaction to the problem. It's like, here's the problem, here's the reaction. Oh, the reaction made other problems, and we do that in our conscious world too. We know that phenomenon. The brain and body also do that. So if you can get the brain and body to respond better to its situation, then you can often make a difference on behavior, symptoms, and conditions. But specifically something with like diabetes, part of the craving for sugar and carbohydrates and the types of things that drive the condition toward diabetes can be aided by calming down the brain frequencies and the brain pattern that causes you to crave sugar and carbohydrates. People can make much better choices when their brain and body are balanced. I used to drink Mountain Dew. That was my drug of choice. And after I did brain training, for several weeks I didn't drink any. And then after about 4 weeks or so, I wanted to just try one. I had 4 little cans. Couldn't waste them. So I tried one and it tasted horrible.
Wow.
It tasted chemically and horrible. And I thought, well, something went wrong with my can, right? And then the next day I tried the next one and the same thing. I'm like, no, it wasn't the can. It was me.
This drink.
Yeah. I changed, and now my body recognizes this for what it is. So before I had to have it because I was out of balance, and it brought me into faux balance is what I call it. After I was actually balanced, it threw me out of balance. It was something that my system rejected. And that's the way a lot of people react to bad food choices and drugs and alcohol and other kinds of choices, because their brain in balance doesn't want that. Their brain out of balance needed that.
Yeah, and this isn't a procedure that is just a one day, one time.
Right. No, we do what's called an intensive. So we do 2 sessions a day for 5 days. The session is about 2 hours, and then they have a 2-hour break in between. So we do it as an intensive because that's how the brain best learns new neural net patterns. If you just do a single session here and then you go off and do back to your old normal pattern, it feels like a vacation. It doesn't stick. In order to get the brain to really make that pattern the dominant one, we do an intensive, and it may take more than one intensive for someone to get fully to the place where that really holds. Also, periodically, people are recommended to come back for a single session, boosters, or mini series, just because your brain is still a moving, organic thing. It's not like your car, you get it tuned up and then you drive it, and then periodically you have to get it tuned up again. Well, nothing in our world supports brain health, so guess what? It's good to come and have something done to support brain health for your life, because most of the time in modern culture we're not doing anything to support brain health. Now, after this process, people do tend to make better choices to support brain health. It's still hard out there to live in this world and have a balanced life, a balanced brain, and function well to really thrive.
Yeah, and how often should those ongoing
It varies.
treatments?
I try to do sessions on myself once a month with a friend that can do placements, and sometimes people fall into a pattern where they'll come and do a mini series, 3 to 5, every 6 to 9 months, whatever their schedule and needs. If their life gets really complicated or a series of things happen that kind of feel like it kind of knocks them off their rhythm, they'll come and do some sessions to support that level of need. I've worked with people who are recovering from cancer and what we call chemo brain. This is a good way to kind of help get their brain back after all of the stuff that assaulted their brain from that process. So it varies in how often someone comes.
And I imagine another question people might have is, what would be the cost for this process?
The assessment and consultation all by itself is about $150, and that's about a 2-hour appointment, so that's where someone can kind of find out if this is appropriate for them. It's a full consultation. There's a lot of information they get in that appointment, but the assessment, consultation, and 10 sessions altogether is $1,800. And I actually do an 11th session about 2 months out as a follow-up that's included in the package, so $1,800.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit of something about you, Stacey, the person. What's unique about you?
Totally unrelated to brain training. I enjoy woodworking and animals of all kinds.
Got some animals on the wall here.
I do have animals on the wall. Those are animals that match these little animal chairs that I have in my office, the little African wooden animal chairs. And I enjoy birds. I used to do wild bird rescue work for a couple of years.
Wow.
And I say rescue, wild bird rescue, they rescued me. When you're chronic pain, chronic headaches, depression, PTSD, and all the rest, and you can't get out of bed, and there's 7 little boxes that are going to start chirping as soon as the sun comes up because they're baby bird season, you get up and you do what you need to do. So, but I still have several birds that are just going to live out their life with me for different reasons, and so that's enjoyable.
Wow, that's great. So where do you see your industry going? What's happening out there? What's gonna happen?
Alternative modalities in general, and frequency modalities in particular, and brain frequency modalities in particular, are in their infancy and are just going to continue to increase, because we're really, in my perspective, we're really moving from a very crude physical way of treating the body. I mean, not that long ago we did frontal lobotomies by sticking an ice pick through your eye socket. I mean, come on. Now we're kind of in the place where we're doing chemical lobotomies with many of the psychotropic drugs. The next level of kind of energetic subtlety is electrical frequencies. And so that's kind of the trajectory that we're clearly moving on. And so brainwave, electrical frequency modalities, and things that work in terms of balancing that fundamental level of activity for the brain or body is going to be the direction, and is going to increase in the future, just because subtlety is underappreciated currently in our medical practice. You know, just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that's the best way to go at it.
Yeah.
Ways that respect the way the brain and body function are going to continue to be a value that more and more clients seek, and that's not going to change. Marketing from pharmaceuticals is not moving that dial the way they want it to go.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah. So is there anybody else in the Portland area that does what you do?
Over the years of my time, 5 years or so doing it, there's been a couple of others that have come and gone. There's one right now that's also in the Portland area. There's been one in Salem that's not there now. There's been several come and go, 5 or so in Washington State. When I first started doing it, there wasn't anyone in Washington. Now there are. And worldwide, there's something around 200 offices.
Wow.
Most in the U.S., but also some in other countries as well. Probably 16 countries, something like that.
Wow. How can people get a hold of you?
OptimizeMe -now.com. The company name is OptimizeMe, but OptimizeMe-now.com is the website. There'll be plenty of research material there. There'll be video testimonials there. There'll be just kind of how does this work material there. And then just contacting me through the site. Phone number 503-844-4905. The website is probably the easiest way to kind of engage at your pace and get information that way, and then contact me through that as well.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Stacey. It's been a real pleasure to get to visit with you. And is there anything you want to say in parting?
I really, really, really am just doing this work for 5 years, living life aware and conscious as much as possible. I am really wanting to encourage people as much as possible to challenge and question the busyness, the addiction to technology, the lifestyle choices that seem like a good idea at the time, but so many of them are really not supporting quality of life and thriving in a balanced and aware but relaxed state at frenetic pace. It's not doing your brain any good. It's not doing your brain any good. Unplug.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, part of this work is about slowing your brain down so that it can see itself function.
Yeah.
Slow your life down so you can see it function and notice where it doesn't function well and how to fix it. If you're going 90 miles an hour all the time, it's hard to notice where it doesn't work. You just think it doesn't work and you don't know where. Slow down and it's easier to see where it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, well, thank you very much. It's been, like I said, a real pleasure. We'll look forward to the future of these treatments.
Very good. Thank you.